Hi guys, this is Vishal here from DrapCode. So in this video, we will understand how to fetch data from Xano. So Xano is a no-code platform to build REST APIs to build your database. In backend layer, where you store data and fetch and access the data, create new records using REST APIs. So in this video, we will understand how to fetch data from Xano and display it on a DrapCode frontend or a DrapCode UI builder using REST APIs of Xano. Okay. So we have a project. As of now, it's a dummy project. It has nothing. So we have installed the user login and sign up plugin, but apart from that, it has nothing. And I have a Xano application or a Xano project where I have couple of tables. So address, person, user, and role. Okay. So I have couple of data in person table. Now I want to display this particular data on DrapCode, directly fetching from Xano using API. So how this can be done? So to access Xano API, you need to go to this API, which is in the left menu. So once you click the API, you will land on a screen like this. So these are all different APIs. So we want the default one, which is basically the APIs which are for the tables which we have created. So we created this address table, auth, person, and role, and users. Okay. So now I want to retrieve all the data of person and display on a data table in DrapCode. Let's see how that can be done. So these are the APIs. If you want to see how the documentation of these API looks like, so you can click on this documentation. It will open a Swagger documentation where you can also try API in the real time, and you can also understand like what type of output are there, what type of requests are there, and all those things. Right. So we want to fetch list of person and display on a data table. So this is the thing which we want to do. So for that, we will be using this person get all person record API. So if I just want to try and see how this looks like, I can just go and try it out, execute. Okay, so it is showing me unauthorized because I think I have marked it as only authorized person can do it. Let's open the authorization for now and see how this works. So I'll go again and execute. So now I am seeing the list of persons which are there in the Xano database. Okay, so all these APIs are open by default. So when I say open, you don't have to pass any authentication or any token to access it. But if you don't want anyone to access your data, which obviously is a good practice, so ideally you should close or mark these APIs as authenticated, so that only person with a valid access token should be able to access it. And we'll see how that can be done here. So what I'll do, I'll mark the API as authenticated. Okay, so only person with access token should be able to access it. Now let's go and create one person who can access it. So by default, once you implement login and sign up with Xano, it gives you a user and role. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll go and create dummy user, and we will use this user for authentication and generating the access token. So I'll say user2 @email.com, and password is 123456. Okay, so I've created a dummy user. We will be using the access token of this user to retrieve data. So I'll go back to my Swagger, and first of all, let's generate an access token. So I'll go to my use API. So we will be needing this auth API to generate an access token. And I'll say try it out. We'll give the user which we just created, user2 @email.com, and password is 123456. So you can execute these API directly on Swagger, or you can use Postman. So here, if you see, it has given me auth token. So this is the token which will be needing to make further API calls to get data from Xano. Now, if we want to fetch the data, so I can try it here. So this API is authenticated. Let's try this API again on Swagger. So the person API was person. So if I execute it, you see it is showing me unauthorized, basically authentication required. So we'll need to pass the access token. So let's try out this API on Postman so that you see how it works on Postman also. So what I'll do, I'll just copy the endpoint, which is this link. So I'll copy this endpoint. I'll go to Postman and I'll just copy the endpoint and make a call. So you see it is not allowing me to access because the API is secured. So let's go and copy the access token which we have generated from the auth API. So I'll go to auth, I'll execute again. It is giving me this access token, so I'll access this access token and I'll just copy it here in the headers, in the authorization. I'll say bearer token, authorization is bearer token, and paste this and make a recall. So here now you see we are able to get the data of person. Now we want to replicate the same flow on DrapCode. So let's go and do it. So my person has 4 fields, if you see: full name, date of birth, gender, and email address. So in DrapCode, what we will do, we will create a collection. We will have all these 4 fields so that we can do the mapping of what the data is coming from Xano. We will map to this collection. We will not store it locally, but that mapping is needed to display it on data table or to use it further with the application. So let's see how that can be done. So I am on DrapCode project. I'll go to collection and I'll say create new collection. So let's create a collection. So I'll give the same name to the collection, which is person. Create it. Let's create the fields. One is full name, which is of type text. This is fine. After that we have email, say email. After that we have date of birth, which is of type date. So I'll say date of birth. And after that we have one more field, which is gender, which is can be a static option, male or female, or can be a normal text field. So let's keep it text field. Create. So I've created a collection which has the same fields as there are in Xano. Okay, so this is something which you need to do manually. We are working on a way where you can actually create these fields, or these fields automatically get created by reading Xano schema. But as of now, it's a manual process, so you need to create these fields. Now we'll not add any data. We'll just go back to collections. So the person collection is here. There is no record. Now let's create a page where we want to display the person data. So I'll go to page and say add page. So I'll say person list, and let's keep it public for now so anyone can access it. Okay, so the person page here, I'll just drop a navbar, simple navbar component, let's say Xano, and let's display the data in form of data table. So I'll just drop a 1 column layout, and in this I'll just drop a data table because I want to display my data in tabular format. Here I'll choose get data from external API. If we are retrieving the data from the data which is stored at DrapCode end, we use get data from collection. But here we don't want to fetch data from DrapCode internal database. We want to fetch it from an external data source or a database, which is Xano, right? So I'll say get data from external API response. So what it is saying, it is saying make a call to Xano, fetch the data, and whatever is coming, just display it here. So we will be needing the external API for this. So external API is a module in DrapCode which communicates with all the REST APIs which are outside of the platform. As of now, we don't have any external API. So let's go and create one, and then we'll come back here. So I'll go to my settings, and here you see this external API. So this is what we are going to be using extensively for all this integration. So external API is more like a Postman type of tool where you give the connection to REST APIs, give the header settings, parameters, dynamic, static values, and bring the data and display on DrapCode. So this is basically which makes DrapCode as a 100% front-end builder, where you bring everything with REST APIs and display, create new records, update, edit, delete, search, pagination, download. Everything can be done on those data. Okay, so the very first API we want to do is fetch person details. So I'll say fetch person records from Xano. Okay, so it's a get call. How do you know all these things? You can just go and check the API. So it's a person API, it's a get call. This is the endpoint. So I'll just copy the endpoint. I paste it here. Now we can see, we can try making a sample request. So I can click send request. You see it is saying request failed with some error because it is not authenticated. So we need to pass the access token as in the header. So I'll go to the header. I'll say authorization bearer and then the access token which was generated with Xano. So I'll just copy the same access token which we've used. Since this API is authenticated, so we will be needing to pass the access token. So I paste the access token and then make a sample request again. We don't want to pass anything, so I'll say just no dynamic data, because as of now we're just retrieving the data, so we don't need anything explicitly. Now if you have seen, it has actually fetched 4 items: person 1, person 2, person 3 and person 4. Now I have made a successful call to retrieve data from Xano using REST API and with authentication with this access token. Now I want to display this data on my table. How do we do it? So once you have the data, you have option to process the data. That what exactly you want to do when the data is coming from the REST API. So one option is store it in the local database. We don't want it. One is you want to enable authentication. So this is a different use case. We'll leave it for now. Third is collection mapping without persisting record. So this is the option which we will be going to use. We are saying bring the data and bind it to the collection which we have given, but don't persist it, or basically don't store it locally. Just bring it from there and display as it is. So I'll say collection mapping. It is asking me that on which path the data is coming. So if you see here, the data is coming on root itself. So there are a lot of scenarios when the data is coming on some particular JSON variable. Here, since it is coming at the first level itself, so we will just leave it as blank. Now it is saying me that in which collection you want to bind. So I want to bind it to person collection, because the schema or the fields are JSON are very similar to the fields which we have for person here. So I'll just choose person. Okay. And so these are the couple of fields. So is there any primary key? So I'll leave it for now. Basically, we should have one key which identifies the record on Xano. As of now, we have just created 4 fields. It's full name, email, date of birth. But we should have at least one more key which identifies the record on Xano. Okay. So I'll say uniquely identifiable column is ID. So that gets stored in the UUID. So with every collection, we have one extra column which is ID. So I'll say whatever the ID is coming from Xano, just store it here. So this is the ID, which is 1, right? So I'll say map it to ID. Full name is coming in which field? It's full name. So I'll just copy it. Full name. Email is coming in email variable. So we need to copy these variable addresses, or if they are internal JSON, so we need to keep the path, the complete path. Okay, email address. Third is gender, which will come here, and this is date of birth. So date of birth is coming in date of birth here. So I'll say save settings. So now I have mapped all the data coming from Xano to the collection which is in DrapCode. So it is one-on-one mapping of all those fields, and I'll say save settings. So now one external API is created which is just fetching the data from Xano and mapping it to a DrapCode collection. So now I go back to my table where I want to display and drop a data table and try to fetch this data. I'll just drop this table and I'll bind the table again. Okay, here in the setting, I'll choose get data from external API. Now I am seeing the API which we just created, fetch person records from Xano. And if you see behind the scene, it has actually created a table which has the fields which we wanted to use. So these are the data which will get wrapped in these fields. So full name, let's say after full name you want to display email, then date of birth, and then gender. Let's ignore these buttons and all these things for now. These we will implement in later videos. So I'll just go and click preview. So here, as soon as the table loads, it is fetching the data from Xano. This is the data directly coming from Xano. If I go to my person collection, I will not see anything. So this is my person collection. So here, if you see, there is no data. In any environment, there is no data because you're not persisting anything. These are just dummy collection which are needed only to give the schema so that we can generate table, we can generate form, that what is the type of data which is expected. Let's go and create one more person in Xano database. Okay, so I'll go to my person table and let's add one more person. Let's say user 5, some date. Let's say mail user5@email.com. Okay, I need to apply. Okay, so now let's go to DrapCode and just reload this page or reload this table. Let's see what happens. So now I reloaded the page, and here you can see it is actually bringing 5 users. So these are the users which we just created on Xano. If I go and update anything, let's go and update anything on Xano. So let's say user 1, I'll say user 111, user 2, I'll say user 222. So I just updated it, nothing. I'll just go and reload the table here again. So you can see we are now getting these updated records. So whatever is happening in Xano, all the changes are getting reflected in the real time. So now we have built a very simple application where we are just displaying the data from Xano. In the coming videos, we will talk about how to create new records, how to update, delete, pagination, downloading, and a lot of exciting things. Continue to keep watching. See you again in the next video. Bye-bye.